Welcome to today's Explainer. I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine we're all sitting around a campfire right now. The night is pitch black, the woods around us are completely silent, and we're about to dive into the chilling, totally unexplained events of Room 307. It's this infamous hotel room in Montana that locals literally refuse to even talk about after the sun goes down. So go ahead and settle in, maybe turn down your lights a bit, and let's walk through this nightmare together. So think about this. What would you do if the hotel room you were sleeping in suddenly felt like it was watching you? Imagine that kind of total, suffocating isolation. You're miles and miles from home. You're locked in this strange room, surrounded by unfamiliar walls. You expect privacy, right? You absolutely expect safety. But what if that isolation is exactly the thing that traps you? What if the room itself is actually a cage, and you're the prey? Let's drop right into the dead of night to understand exactly what that creeping sense of dread really feels like.
Okay, it's midnight. The room is suffocatingly silent. You know that heavy, oppressive quiet where you can almost hear your own heartbeat? You're finally drifting off to sleep after a long, exhausting day of travel, and then, cutting straight through that silence, comes the very first sound. A soft, extremely deliberate tap. And you know right away it's not the wind outside, it's not the pipes settling in some old building. It is the distinct, unmistakable sound of a human knuckle rapping against solid wood.
A few agonizing seconds pass by, just long enough for you to kind of convince yourself that, hey, maybe I just imagined it. But then it happens again. Tap. This second knock is louder, and it echoes out into the completely empty hallway. The suspense just starts twisting in the pit of your stomach. You're holding your breath, just waiting in that suffocating stillness, eyes wide open, staring absolutely dead into the dark. Tap. The third knock. And then just chillin'. Absolute silence. You carefully pull yourself out of bed, creeping as quietly as you can toward that heavy wooden door. Your heart is pounding out of your chest, and you press your eye against the freezing cold glass of the peephole. You're entirely expecting to see, a late-night wanderer or maybe a confused guest at the wrong room, but the peephole reveals an entirely empty, dimly lit corridor. There is absolutely no one out there. Well, to understand how we actually arrived at this terrifying moment, we've got to rewind a bit to earlier that evening. It was October 2023, and a 32-year-old guy named Michael Carter was on what should have been a totally mundane business trip, driving across Montana. But out of nowhere, this sudden, blinding snowstorm hit. We're talking zero visibility, incredibly treacherous roads. He was basically forced to pull over in this remote little town called Black Pine. And the only place to stay? The Pine Ridge Inn. It was this aging roadside hotel that honestly looked completely abandoned from the street. The neon sign was barely flickering, several windows were totally boarded up. But with zero other options in the freezing storm, Michael went inside, and at 11:30 p.m., he checked into room 307.
Now, the ominous tone was set before Michael even made it up to the third floor. The elderly receptionist working the front desk was deeply, deeply unnerving. She was gaunt with this pale, almost translucent skin and these hollow, nervous eyes that just constantly darted around the empty lobby. She was frantically clicking away at her computer, and her trembling hands actually hesitated before reluctantly giving him the room key. And as he walked toward the elevator, she called out to him, and her voice was dead serious. She said, "Whatever you hear tonight, don't open the door." Michael actually chuckled a bit, thinking it was just some creepy local joke to scare the out-of-towner. But her face remained entirely rigid. There was zero humor in her eyes, just pure, unadulterated dread. So the elevator slowly opens up onto the third floor, and the whole environment just drastically shifts. The hallway was unnaturally quiet and terribly cold, like a deep, biting chill that seeped right through Michael's winter coat. And as he walked up to room 307, he noticed these deep, jagged scratches, literally clawed into the dark wood right around the doorframe. Once he got inside, the room just had this heavy, suffocating energy to it, kind of anchored by this massive old television mounted up on the wall. Honestly, he really should have turned back right then and there, but instead he walked in, locked the door, and unknowingly trapped himself inside. All right, so back to the knocks. After those initial 3 taps and seeing the empty peephole, Michael backed away and retreated to his bed. But the second he closed his eyes, the sound started up again. It wasn't knocking this time, though. It was footsteps. For one full, absolutely agonizing hour, he lay there totally paralyzed under those thin, scratchy hotel blankets, just listening. Slow, heavy, dragging footsteps, pacing back and forth,
back and forth directly outside his door. Someone or something was stalking that hallway, just inches away from where he lay. Finally, gathering literally every ounce of courage he had left, Michael crept back to the door and looked through the peephole one more time. And there, standing at the very far end of the hallway, was a woman. But she wasn't moving at all. She wasn't even blinking. Her head was tilted unnaturally down to one side, almost like a broken doll. And she was staring dead at room 307. Michael staggered backward, practically shoving the peephole cover shut. Instantly, the footsteps stopped. And then, sliding right through the crack under the door, came this raspy, dry whisper. "Let me in."
It's 2 a.m. now, and suddenly, that old, heavy television on the wall hisses to life. The static clears up to reveal what looks like a security camera feed of the exact hallway right outside, but the timestamp in the corner read 1998. Michael watched in absolute horror as a screaming woman pounded frantically on the door of room 307, right before this massive, dark shadow emerged and dragged her violently backward into the pitch-black darkness. But then, the screen flickered, the timestamp shifted to the current date, and the feed showed Michael himself. He was standing out in the hallway, staring straight up into the camera, and the absolute worst part, his twisted doppelganger was slowly, widely smiling. Michael panicked, rushed to the wall, and literally ripped the power cord right out of the socket. But the television stayed on, and that impossible, terrifying smile just kept growing wider.
Then, out of nowhere, a deafening crash echoes from somewhere down the hall. On the screen, the shadow surges forward, and instantly, the 3 knocks return. But this time, they are violently loud, just smashing against the real wood of his door. The metal door handle starts to slowly, painfully turn. Michael throws his entire body weight against the door, desperately holding it shut with everything he's got. And right then, the temperature in the room plummets so drastically and so fast that every breath he takes plumes into these thick white clouds, and you can actually hear jagged frost rapidly creeping and cracking across the window panes. As Michael is bracing himself against this freezing, visibly shaking door, the whisper comes back. But this time, it wasn't that raspy voice of the woman from before. Through the tiny crack under the door came the words, "Open the door, Michael." And the voice on the other side was his own. It was a perfect, chilling, exact replica of his own voice. The sheer, suffocating panic of hearing himself pleading to be let into his own room pushed Michael to the absolute edge of his sanity. His heart is just hammering in his chest as his own voice just keeps begging from the darkness. And then, just as quickly as the whole thing escalated, the TV snaps off, the door handle stops moving, and that absolute dead silence returns. Incredibly, Michael survived the night. At the very first light of sunrise, he bolted from that room, sprinted downstairs, and drove his car like a madman until he found the local police. But what the police discovered only made the nightmare so much worse. When officers pulled up to the Pine Ridge Inn, the lobby was completely empty. I mean, no guests, no employees, nothing. When Michael described that gaunt, nervous, elderly manager who gave him his key, the officers just exchanged this really dark look. They ended up showing him an old newspaper clipping. That woman had indeed been the manager, but she died back in 1998, which you'll remember is the exact same year from that impossible television footage. And digging deeper into town records, they found that multiple guests had vanished from room 307 over the decades. And almost all of them had reported hearing 3 slow knocks right before disappearing forever. To this very day, Michael entirely refuses to speak about what happened after that night. He checked out, he left Montana, and he absolutely never looked back. But that abandoned Pine Ridge Inn, it is still sitting there. Urban explorers who are brave enough to actually step inside still report hearing those pacing footsteps, the hushed whispers, and without fail, 3 slow knocks on the door of room 307, even when the entire building is completely empty. So I'll leave you with this. If you were trapped in that freezing room, terrified, exhausted, and you heard those 3 knocks right on the other side of the wood, would you have opened the door? Stay safe out there, everyone. Welcome.